Warning. The senior citizens in this presentation have not been censored. They have not been directed. If you are offended by their jokes or funny stories, frankly, they don't give a damn.
There was a time when I was the funny one. All my friends were sure that I would make them smile. As I'm sitting with my memories of the good times with my peers, still laughing after all these years. Oh, still laughing after all these years.
Guy walks into a store. Says, I want some Polish sausage. Guy says, are you Polish? He says, how dare you ask me that question? That's racist. You can't ask me that. If somebody walks in asking for pizza pie, do you ask him if he's Italian? No. Guy walks in asking me for a bagel. Do you ask him if he's Jewish? No. So then why the hell did you ask me if I'm Polish? Because, sir, you're in Home Depot. Same guy has a lot of nerve and walks right outside. He holds up a very dignified-looking guy. He says, give me all your money. Guy says, how dare you? I happen to be a congressman. All right, give me back my money. I said, hey, buddy, back off. And he backed off. He punched me right in the mouth. It hurt, but I went to my dentist and she said, look, do whatever you want. You know, you'll be okay tonight. Just do the show.
The other day, at the classroom, I said to the youngsters, when you go home this afternoon, keep an eye on the neighborhood, and maybe you'll find things that are really very interesting, and you'll come back tomorrow morning, and we'll talk about it. And sure enough, the next day, little Joseph raises his hand, and he said, you know, they had the police come down by Palacio. He was the undertaker, and a couple of guys came out with guns, and it was very exciting. And little Mary Ann raised her hand. And you know, over by Buffy's, Jimmy Buffy's, there were kids who were smoking near the garage, and that it almost caught fire, and the firemen came. Mrs. Modell, that was very exciting. And little Anthony then raises his hand. Yes, Anthony? And he comes up to the blackboard, picks up the chalk, and puts a little dot here and a little dot there. Anthony, what's with the two dots? Well, Mrs. Modell, this is a period, and this is a period. And my sister missed two periods, and boy, there's plenty of excitement in my house. And there was some work on the children up on the bulletin board. And I had Anthony at the blackboard, and we were practicing our spelling words while the children were at their seats with their pencils and paper. Okay, Anthony, the word is shirt. Say the word shirt, shirt. Oh, I love your blue flannel shirt. Okay, Anthony, pick up the chalk. And Anthony picks up the chalk and he writes S-H-I-T. I quickly erase it. Anthony, let's try again. Okay, Anthony, the word is shirt. Think of all the sounds. Anthony picks up the chalk and he writes S-H-I-T. And I quickly erase it. Just a minute, Mrs. Modell. Let me see if I can help you. And up comes the helping teacher. Okay, Anthony, let's say the word shirt. Good. All right, shirt. Let's hear it again. Shirt. Good. All right, Anthony, pick up the chalk. Anthony picks up the chalk. S-H-I-T-T. And I said to her, now see what you've done? Now we can't even spell shit right.
This girl called me. She says, come on over. There's nobody home. I went over there. There was nobody home.
And I'm addicted to Military Channel, and I hear the announcers say about Cialis that if you have a erection more than 36 hours, call the doctor. And I yelled out, call a doctor to hell, get me a hooker. And then I hear my wife in the other room yell out, as long as you don't call me. With 30 women. And they give out these tubes, you know, you ever see these tubes? styrofoam.
Yeah.
And they're long, but you put it down, you ride like a horse.
Yeah.
It gives you great exercise. This thing was sitting straight up like that. And I yell out, "Thank God for Viagra!" They all jumped on me. As you know, I'm married 60 years. And the guy says, 60 years? That's a very special anniversary. What are you doing about it? How are you going to celebrate it? He said, I'm giving it a lot of thought. I know it's very special. Because if you wait too long, it'll be 61. But what are you going to do about it? He says, well, I did take my wife on my 30th. On my 30th. To Italy. He said, that's fantastic. That's very good. How are you going to top it? He said, you know, I'm thinking going back and get her. You like that?
Right outside the club, there was a woman with a dog. I always liked dogs. But I was curious. I said, Miss, what kind of a dog is that? She said, it's a French Spitz. There's no such dog as a French Spitz. And the dog looked up and went, Monsieur Ripouille.
The chief, the Indian, goes to New York City for the first time, and somebody's showing him around, and he's very impressed with all the buildings, but really what he's impressed with are the beautiful women and how well they're dressed and how nice they smell. And he's very taken with them. He'd go up to a pretty woman and he'd raise his hand and he'd say, "Chance." Then he'd walk around and come to another one and he'd say, "Chance." So he did this 5 or 6 times, and the guy who was showing him around, he says, "Excuse me, Chief," he said, "I've been familiar with a lot of Indians, and they usually say, raise your hand like that, and they say, how?" He says, "Me no how, we just want chance." These 2 Jewish guys are going into work, and they always travel on the same subway. And the one says to the other, he says, "How come?" He says, "We've been going to this route for 20 years almost." He says, "You never ask me how's business." So the guy says, "So?" He says, "All right, how's business?" He says, "Don't ask." So on the way here, I stopped at the butcher's, and he was telling me his troubles, and he said he backed into his grinder. His meat grinder got a little behind in his orders.
Ida and Sam go to the doctor because Sam isn't feeling well. So they're in the examining room, and the nurse comes in and says to Sam, who's a little hard of hearing, "We're going to need a stool sample, a sperm sample, and a blood sample." And she walks out of the room. So Sam says to Ida, "I didn't hear. What did she say?" Ida says to Sam, "I think she wants your underwear."
Two elderly ladies meet at a garden party, and they hit it off real well, and they decide to meet the next day to have a cup of tea together. So the first lady gets to the coffee shop the next day, and she's sitting there waiting for her friend, and then she sees her friend coming through the door, and she stands up, she waves, "Hi, did you come on the bus?" "Yeah, I did, but I made it look like an asthma attack." Getting old is such a drag. Your face, your tits, your ass, they sag, your arms, your legs, not to mention the neck, the flab, bags, and wrinkles. Oh, what the heck. The golden ears, you've heard it said. I prefer to call them lead. There's nothing you can do. It just gets worse. Getting old. The final curse.
Pat and Mike first came to this country, and they fell in love with American baseball. They just loved. They followed the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Yankees. They just loved. They went to every game they could, you know. And as they were getting older, they were wondering, you know, do you think they have baseball in heaven? So they made an agreement. The first one to die would somehow communicate with the other, the one who was living, to tell them about baseball in heaven. So sure enough, one day Pat dies, and that very night his ghost appears to Mike, and he says, Mike, he says, I have good news and bad news for you. So Mike got all excited. He says, what's the good news? He says, they got mad baseball up here in heaven. He says, they're a really great team too, you know. And Mike looks at him and says, what's the bad news? He says, well, you're slated to pitch next Sunday. The one guy talked about Pat and Mike coming to America, and they got on the airplane, and it just took off, and the pilot comes on over the intercom and says, ladies and gentlemen, he says, we're heading toward JFK, and we're going to be a little bit delayed. We're just out over the coast of Ireland, and he said, one of our engines fell off. He says, we're going to be delayed 2 hours landing in JFK, New York. You know, Pat and Mike looked a little concerned, but they kept going, you know. And then the pilot comes on about a half hour later. He says, and we're out over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean now, he says, and we're going to be delayed another 2 hours landing at Kennedy Airport. He says, but not to worry. We got 2 more engines left. He says, it's routine. We're fine. You know, we're doing okay. So Pat and Mike look at each other, and they just, you know, a little worried, but, you know, not too concerned. So they're coming in over the coast of Newfoundland, and the pilot comes on, and he says, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be delayed a full 6 hours landing at Kennedy Airport. We dropped that third engine, and you know, so Pat looks at Mike, and he says, Jesus, I hope they don't drop that fourth engine. We'll be up here all day.
Old man, 2 elderly men were sitting on a park bench, and one of them says, so Jakey, how's your wife? My wife? I think she's dead. What do you mean you think she's dead? Well, the sex is the same, but the dishes are piling up. I made that one up.
Okay, so there's a lecture. It's a lecture by a foremost sexologist. It's a lecture about sex. And the sexologist wants to get to know his audience a little bit before his lecture. So he says he's interested in finding out the frequency with which couples have sex. So he says, okay, everybody, raise your hand. Anyone who has sex 3 or more times a day. Well, 1 or 2 people's hands go up. He said, okay. Who has sex every day? A number of people's hands go up. He says, okay, who has sex 3 times a week or more? A fair number of hands go up. Who has sex once a week? Some hands go up. Who has sex once a month? 1 or 2 hands go up. Once every 2 months, a few hands. How about twice a year? A couple of hands go up. How about once a year? Looks around, once a year. One guy's hand is up, and it's really up in the air, and he's hysterical. He's laughing. He says, yeah, what is it? If it's once a year, how come you're so happy? Tonight's the night!
So now I am a new kind of socialite. Can make a difference for the people that I love. 'Cause I've got the sound of laughter still ringing in my ears. Still laughing after all these years. Yes, I've got the sound of laughter still ringing in my ears. Still laughing